have the first task force is membership and communication. Scott Gibson, if you could come up.
Good morning, everybody. Scott Gibson, and I've been the chair of the Membership and Communication Task Force for the last couple of years, I guess, and we've been, and so when we've had these task force get-togethers to try and get to brainstorm things and talk to folks about how to improve participation and membership in the Rocky Mountain West Pavement Preservation Partnership and the partnerships overall. One of the, as a local agency kind of guy from an MPO, the states are pretty well represented. You know, again, we always regret having trouble getting Hawaii here so that they can invite us to Hawaii for a meeting. But other than that, the state participation is generally pretty good. Folks come and that type of thing, and so we've always kind of looked at how do we get local agencies to participate so they can benefit from the information that's presented here and the things that are happening with other places. Last year in Seattle, we had really good local participation and local agency participation. It was kind of in conjunction. I don't know if Ryan's still here, but it was sort of in alignment with the Northwest Pavement Management Group, which is a very strong agency organization for local agencies. This year, I think the meeting happened a little bit early in the construction season, or toward the end of the construction season, and I think that's how come we didn't get as good a participation this year. But David Holmgren sat in, and we're talking about, so how do we get more good involvement next year in Salt Lake City for the Rocky Mountain West? And we talked about, again, reaching out to our contractor partners and that kind of thing, and really promoting that, because there's a lot of communities in the Salt Lake City area that could provide, that could send a local representative to participate in that. And so we're going to set up a conference call and work directly with Dave Holmgren with UDOT to try and make sure that that happens. And then, and also kind of really promote the certification opportunity side of things to get them to come help participate in that. And then John talked about goes into his past chair role when he goes to conferences like the Northwest Pavement Management Conference. He would say, "Hi, I'm John, and I'm from the Rocky Mountain West Pavement Preservation Partnership," and kind of use that as an opportunity to make people more aware of this organization and how we can do things to help this organization help them do better and communicate, and again help tell their story so they can get better support for their programs. Any questions, comments?
Our second one is for research, and currently Kevin is the leader on that.
We were very lucky this year. I was the chair for the last year, and nothing much got done. But we're very lucky this time that all of the stars lined up, because our new academic member is now going to be the chair for our research group. So that is the perfect combination to head up the research task force. So it's going to be Professor Samaya Nasiri. And what college does she work? WSU. So we're very fortunate that we actually have a professional researcher heading up the research task force. Couldn't get any better than that. We had a quick discussion before she had to leave and embark on her 6-hour drive home. She's going to be taking a much more aggressive look into the research need statements and trying to get that process restarted and getting those wheels moving again, because that's an extremely important aspect of what we're doing. She's also going to be looking at the different research that the state DOTs, local communities, and the counties have been doing in pavement preservation research. So she's going to be trying to gather all that, trying to start the process to gather all that information together in a more logical, methodical approach that professors are great at doing. We're going to probably start our first conference call. She's going to be taking the chair. I volunteered to be a co-chair to help her in any way possible. We're probably gonna have our first conference call toward the end of October, early November. We're in the process of setting that up right now. Any questions?
Last but certainly not least, we have Gary Hicks for the training task force.
Well, we had an interesting discussion, a fairly lively discussion on training, and I'm going to summarize it with just a few slides. I know in the work plan there are certain goals for training, but we went back and kind of revisited what we really need to accomplish, and of course that is a trained workforce in all aspects of training. But we need to really think about who needs the training, what skills are needed, and who delivers the training. And all agencies, we need to make sure that they're convinced that training is needed and valued. I know in California, training is not an important issue. We just don't see the training going on in pavement preservation that is needed with Caltrans and some of the local agencies. And and Caltrans, we have task force from Caltrans related to all sorts of things, but training is not important to Caltrans in terms of pavement preservation. So we need carrots, we need a champion, and we need maybe some tie to federal funding to provide a stick. I know in Montana, Jody mentioned that federal funding is important, and training in terms of inspection is important and is tied to federal funding. And we need to determine the best format and delivery method for all of the training. Do we do online training? It might be suitable for some things, but we need to look at other formats of delivering the training. So we have to identify the critical needs. There's a lot of training materials out there. We've identified, and in that packet that Jason put together for the training report, there's no doubt that there's a lot of training materials that are there, but who needs the training? Is it, we need to identify it's engineers, technicians, inspectors, a whole host of training, and we need to decide what training is most appropriate. We can do online, we can do classroom, webinars, just-in-time training, lab demos, field demos, but probably the best is some combination of one or more of these training opportunities, and that's what is important. And maybe the stick is making sure that everyone has to be certified in any of these areas. Now, the training venues, where would we give the training? You could do online training, you can do training at partnership meetings. We can provide a 2 or 4 hour training block here at the partnership meetings in the future. Universities can provide the training. There are a number of universities in the western region that could provide training if we know what sorts of training and things are needed. Now, there are, like I said, a lot of training opportunities, but we need to identify what is needed. The available training materials, the FHWA has some, NHI, all the states have an LTAP program. Some of them are much more active in training than others. Oregon, you saw what they did yesterday. California's LTAP program used to provide a lot of training, but it has moved from the University of California to Sacramento State, and now it's basically disappeared. There's no real training in preservation like there used to be with the University of California. The industry has a lot of training opportunities, both the concrete and asphalt industries and the emulsion industries. And then the National Center, CP2, UNR, Washington State, or the University of Washington, a lot of universities in the western area could deliver training if we had funding and a carrot to try to get the funding taken care of. So which types of training are needed for the different audiences? It's going to be different for engineers, technicians, maintenance crews. We've got to identify those needs, and we've got to make sure training materials are available. I know Washington State does a lot of this. They have training sessions, and what is it, Tim? You have about 6 trainers that work in the state. That might be a good model. What are the gaps in training? Are there things that we need to identify that are needed in terms of training? And of course, one of the goals of this group is to create a training library. We will continue our phone calls. Jason has been really good at organizing phone calls. And what we need to do is to set some lofty goals for the training to try to make sure there is some sort of benefit to the employee and that the training is valued by all the agencies. How do we get the agencies to value training? FHWA and NHI used to do a lot of training, but you don't see as many courses as you used to. One of the things that David Peshkin suggested is creating a training matrix based on the type of employee, the type of delivering system, to identify what sorts of training is needed for employees as one rotates out and you need to backfill an employee to replace that one. What types of training are needed for different types of personnel? And so that's something we're going to be working on, identifying the needed training, and try to work with FHWA and states to ensure that training is a valuable part of an employee's growth and is valued by top management. So that's it. I think we had a good discussion. We touched on more lofty goals rather than just to identify training materials that are available, and I think that's something that was really valuable for our group. Thank you.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.